Hello and welcome to yet another educative edition of China Now, your most authoritative news and current affairs talk show, tailored to bringing you updates from China and across the globe. My name is Makiza Latifa. It's always a great pleasure to come your way. Let's start off with China Currents with Chris. This is where you get all the major headlines and stories that made headways in China this week. Our stories for today include China's response to US President Donald Trump's 10% tariff increase, China's exhibition of lunar soil at the Osaka World Expo, which opened in Japan on April 13, 2025, marking the first time these samples have been displayed to a global audience, and also China setting a global standard for elderly care robots. It definitely promises to be an interesting segment, so let's get started.
China Currents is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started. Welcome to China Currents, your weekly news report on the latest developments in China. I'm Chris, and in this episode, China sets a new front in Trump's tariff war. China exhibits lunar soil at the Japan World Expo. China sets a global standard for elderly care robots. First, let's see what's new in China's hitback. On April 11th, China raised reciprocal tariffs on US goods to 125%. In a statement, it noted that at current tariff levels, American goods have completely lost their competitiveness in China. Therefore, Beijing decided to stop playing the childish number game with Trump and expand the tariff war into a new front he has been trying to avoid: trade in services. Trump has long insisted that the US is being taken advantage of in global trade. However, the reality is quite different. The United States service trade is taking advantage of the whole world, especially from China. According to data from the US Bureau of Economic Analysis, American service exports topped $1 trillion in 2023, making up 13% of global services trade. In this space, the US runs a trade surplus with most major economies across Europe, Asia, and Americas, totaling nearly $300 billion in 2024. The dominance is even more striking in high-value services. In 2023 alone, income from intellectual property royalties and licensing fees exceeded $144 billion, far outpacing any other nation. China stands as the largest contributor to America's services trade surplus. In 2023, it accounted for around 9.5% of the total. U.S. service exports to China grew from $5.63 billion in 2001 to over $46.7 billion in 2023. The annual surplus in this sector has expanded more than 11-fold, particularly in education, travel, intellectual property use, and financial and transportation services. A report by the Institute of International Education shows that more than 1 million international students were studying in the United States in 2024. Among them, about 28% were from China. Association of International Educators reports that international students at U.S. colleges and universities contributed $43.8 billion to the U.S. economy during the 2023 to 2024 academic year and supported more than 378,000 jobs. But now, Trump's aggressive tariff and immigration policies are threatening the stability of this industry. On April 9th, China's Ministry of Culture and Tourism issued a travel risk alert for Chinese tourists heading to the United States, while the Ministry of Education warned students of the risk of studying there. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, some 1.1 million Chinese tourists visited the United States in 2023, making up 14% of America's service exports to China. Travel, healthcare, and education were the main categories of spending. Beyond tourism and education, the U.S. entertainment industry, especially Hollywood, export heavily to China. According to Chinese state media, 8 of the top 10 highest-grossing imported films in China last year were American. generating over $796 million and accounting for 64.1% of all imported box office revenue. Obviously, the American Dream Factory relies heavily on the recognition of Chinese consumers. If the American dream, portrayed by Trump, makes the Chinese feel disgusted, then Hollywood will naturally not be able to continue to enjoy the Chinese market. On April 10th, China's National Film Administration announced a reduction in the number of American films to be imported. The news sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Warner Brothers' share dropped 12.5% and Disney fell 6.8%. While American films have been gradually losing ground in China, blockbuster productions still manage to strike a chord with audiences. Monique White, Executive Vice President at California Pictures, told CBS News that the budget cuts are inevitable now that China-sourced revenue is dwindling. She also warned that if Trump's tariff war spills over into Europe and Australia, the financial squeeze will get even tighter. Trump once said, "Do not retaliate and you'll be rewarded." But in fact, as long as the US does not take the initiative to provoke its trade partners, all Americans will be rewarded. According to WTO Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, services exports directly supported 4.1 million American jobs as of 2022. And those jobs pay well. Preliminary data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics show that, as of February 2025, workers in professional and business services earned an average of over $43 an hour, compared to $34.8 in manufacturing. Even CNN acknowledged on April 11th that service sector jobs are at risk because of Trump's tariff campaign. When Trump called for bringing manufacturing back to the United States, did he really consider how the service industry would be affected? During World War II, British Air Marshal Arthur Harris said of the Nazis, "They entered this war under the rather childish delusion that they were going to bomb everyone else and nobody was going to bomb them." China has now exposed the same flaw in Trump's trade strategy, showing that tariff war won't just develop on the track designed by Trump's authority and provide the world with a more creative path to fight back against the bully. Next up, on April 13th, the Osaka World Expo opened in Japan. Inside the China pavilion, the country publicly unveiled lunar soil samples brought back by its Chang'e 5 and Chang'e 6 missions, marking the first time these samples have been displayed to a global audience. Spanning over 3,500 square meters, the China Pavilion is one of the largest foreign national pavilions at this year's Expo. It features 3 main exhibition zones. In one of them, visitors can view and compare lunar soil samples from both the near side and the far side of the moon through a special lens installation. China is the 3rd country in the world to successfully return lunar samples. In December 2020, Chang'e 5 brought back 1,731 grams of lunar soil. By 2024, the China National Space Administration had distributed 85.48 grams of the samples to over 130 domestic research teams, resulting in 105 published scientific papers. Notably, researchers identified the moon's 6th new mineral, Chang'e, and used the samples to push back the estimated end of lunar volcanic activity by about 800 million years. China has also gifted lunar samples to Russia, France, and Italy. In June 2024, Chang'e 6 accomplished the world's first successful sample return mission from the moon's far side. On November 15th, Chinese scientists released 2 studies based on these samples, revealing that volcanic activity may have occurred on the far side as recently as 2.8 billion years ago, filling the critical gap in research on the moon's geological evolution. At this year's Osaka Expo, China is bringing its lunar exploration achievements from the research lab to the general public. For the first time, people will have the chance to closely observe this gift from the stars above. Moving on March 5th, the International Electrotechnical Commission released a new international standard for elder care robots, which was drawn up by Chinese experts. This standard provides guidelines for the design, manufacturing, testing, and certification of elder care robots, based on the physical and behavioral characteristics of older adults. According to the World Health Organization, the global population aged 60 and above is expected to reach 2.1 billion by 2050, including 426 million people over the age of 80. Data from China's National Bureau of Statistics show that by the end of 2024, the country had over 200 million people aged 65 and older, accounting for more than 15% of the total population. As people age, they often experience declines in sensory, physical, and cognitive functions, and in some cases, complete loss of independence. Elder care robots are designed to help reduce the burdens on families and caregivers, and in some cases, support seniors in living independently. For example, wearable exoskeleton robots use sensors to monitor a user's movements, anticipate their motion intentions through real-time analysis, and provide mechanical support accordingly. Other elder care robots on the market can assist with the tasks such as managing toileting, provide massages, feeding, and even bathing. Now China is leading in a humanoid robot industry. According to a research paper by Morgan Stanley, of the 100 publicly traded companies worldwide that are developing humanoids, 56% were based in China. China is also home to 45% of the world's integrators, which are firms that customize robots to match end users' needs. According to Chinese state media, the price of some walking assistance robots in China ranges from $1,300 to $4,100. The release of this international standard aims to help regulate the design and production of elder care robots, paving the way for scalable, effective solutions to meet the demands of an aging global population. On the other hand, on April 11th, Shanghai Fourier Intelligence unveiled its general-purpose humanoid robot, the Fourier N1, and made its design blueprints, assembly guide, and basic operating software open source, allowing developers around the world to freely replicate the product. From government to industry, China is working to ensure that cutting-edge technology can improve the lives of the elderly in a safe, affordable, and accessible way. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts or comments, please leave them below. And see you next time.
Thank you so much, Chris, for bringing us up to speed with all that's been happening this past few days. Next on the show is the Thinkers Forum. Here's where we pick the thoughts of scholars and thinkers alike on what they make of very important subjects for conversation. Today is in two folds. The first segment features a discussion between our host, Zhou Li of Wave Media, and Shiu Sin Por, who is the executive director of the New Paradigm Foundation and was formerly the head of the Hong Kong government's Central Policy Unit. Stay with us for more details.
Well, there's no doubt the Taiwan issue and the Taiwan Strait, as the economist said, the most dangerous place on earth in terms of war. But in actuality, of course, war is happening in Ukraine, war is happening in the Palestine, and war is happening in the Red Sea. The most dangerous, or one of the dangerous point, is of course the Taiwan issue. Trump has a very different view on the situation compared to the traditional US view on the issue, and traditional including on Republicans and Democrats, conservative or liberal. Okay, his view is completely different from both parties. He doesn't see Taiwan as an essential interest for the US because he doesn't believe in the first island train in containing China militarily. He doesn't believe in that. I stress that this is Trump's idea, not his team in the Defense Department or in the State Department or the National Security Establishment. Okay, those are still the traditional conservative view on the situation. We have to keep Taiwan the status quo, not letting China take it back, because we'll let the cat out of the box and will be discredited in the eyes of our allies like Japan, Korea, Philippines, and all those friends, US friends in Asia. They have a narrative on this, very consistent over decades. Trump doesn't buy in that, okay? So the interesting situation is how the situation in Taiwan would change. Now, with Trump's behavior in Ukraine and his attitude towards the TSMC, which he thinks that they're stealing from America and they have to move their production back to America, otherwise he'll impose a huge tariff on it. It made the Taiwanese, a lot of people, including the pro-independent forces, very nervous now, right? Because it represents a huge change of the US administration's view towards the nature of the Taiwan issues and the nature of the US-Taiwan relations. But as you said, this situation actually created a huge problem for us, for China. As I said, that our position is that we're going to develop, we're going to improve the livelihood of our people, we're going to get stronger economically, militarily, we're going to develop our science and technology, etc. We want to do it peacefully, okay? Including the Taiwan unification. We want to try all methods to try to resolve this peacefully. But my question is, objectively, the situation does not allow you to behave in this way. What are you going to do? I mean, this can be your policy, this can be your attitude, but the situation would not allow this. Okay, using Taiwan as my conclusion, which I think more and more people come to the same conclusion, the Taiwan issue cannot be solved peacefully. It's not just because the DPP, the pro-independent political party, is controlling Taiwan now. It's simply because America would not allow that to happen.
America will not allow peaceful reunification of Taiwan, you mean?
Peaceful unification. They're saying that, well, you cannot use force. And the only way to happen is the two sides come together and come to agreement. But on the other hand, they are working behind us to prevent any political force in Taiwan to do that, including the KMT, not just the DPP. And their control on Taiwan is more or less complete. So this will not happen. A peaceful resolution of the situation will not happen. And I think it's increasingly clear to everybody. But I don't think we want to use military force either. So our determination to resolve the issue is clear. But how? The only way, I think, is by force. But we are not ready to make that change. So actually, the larger picture is the same. We want a peaceful rise, but America will not allow you to have a peaceful rise. Okay? They will do everything other than military to contain you, to slow you down, and we are reacting to it. Of course, a direct war between a nuclear power, which the US and China are both, is unthinkable. Okay, unthinkable. But a proxy war, including a war over the Taiwan Strait, is possible, right?
But do you think the US will commit to the war militarily?
Well, when they are desperate enough, that's the situation now, okay? When they are desperate enough, and their element, I believe, is true, that their element in the US establishment wants a war. They think they can drag you down with a proxy war, okay? Like what they think in Ukraine, that a war can drag the Russian down, which didn't end up that way, but that was the thinking. You cannot exclude that possibility. They are the minority now. There may be a small voice within the US establishment, but they are always there that they want a war with China by a proxy, so can drag down China, and they can achieve their purpose of slowing down China's progress, or even destroying it by having an internal color revolution. Okay, that's their thinking.
Can I ask you about, quite bluntly, do you think that Beijing's mind is already made up about the readiness to go to war over Taiwan?
No, I don't think so. I think from what I learned, of course, very partially. The military balance between the two sides, not just mainland China and Taiwan, but mainland China, Taiwan plus the US or Japan or any other possible involvement. The balance is clearly, there's no fight. Okay? China can solve the issue easily, militarily, even with American involvement. And my guess now is the American doesn't want to get involved because Shou from Taiwan said many times that he talked to some American generals about these issues. They don't want to get into a fight over Taiwan Strait because technically it's a losing game. They have many war games and all come up, the US is on the losing side. So in terms of the military strength on both sides, and this side is not just Taiwan, Taiwan plus US, Japan, whatever, we have an overwhelming military ability to take Taiwan. I think that's the foregone conclusion, at least on the US side. They are clear about this. The simple example, which is recognized by some retired general on the Taiwan side. The missile forces that we have, okay, this can shoot 300 miles easily, and the accuracy is within 10 square meters. That means mainland China can lock out all the important facilities in Taiwan in 10 minutes without any warnings, because this is not huge missiles where you can watch with satellites and how they are moved, as the US is watching how Russians prepare for war in Ukraine before it actually happened, because they have this intelligence and they've been telling Russia, don't do it or we'll retaliate, etc. So they know well advanced what the Russian is trying to do. In our case, they can't do nothing because these are just missiles on a truck, and you can have thousands of it in Fujian or Zhejiang, which is only 200 miles away from the island. You can lock out all the power and communication and military installations on the island in 10 minutes. So there's no fight. Okay, they know it. Okay, the Taiwanese know it, the military knows it, the US knows it. This gesturing is just on the surface. Now, put that aside. That doesn't mean that I think that Beijing has decided to resolve the issue militarily. My piece raised two extreme possibilities. Both are plausible, okay? One is because Trump likes to do deals, okay? Can you make a deal with Trump on the issue of Taiwan? I think it's possible, but it's going to be very complicated and very difficult because you have to know what Trump wants, okay? And itself is a huge issue. The other extreme is that there's going to be a war because the right-wing elements in the Trump administration are going to push the issue so hard, they're going to force us to take actions, okay, so-called the red line. And we have a red line, but where's the red line other than, say, if they officially proclaim independence, then there's a red line. But actually, the red line can be many other things, okay? For example, the US is selling weapons to Taiwan, increasingly at a higher sophistications and levels. Is that a red line? All these are ongoing negotiations and exchange between the parties, not on the table, but under the table. They are all playing these games. So the Taiwan situation is very dangerous. Other than the obvious red lines, there are many other issues can be a red line. If one party push beyond that, they're going to force Beijing to take actions. And for Beijing, that's mainly a political decision, not a military one. The military situation, the balance is, I think, is quite clear to both sides. Okay, but the question, of course, for China is twofold. One, after you're liberating Taiwan, how are you going to manage? Second, how are you going to deal with the reactions of the US and other countries after the fight. Okay? Both issues they have to have a clear answer before they decide to take actions. I think that's the difficulty Beijing is facing now.
Yeah, that's actually the exact question I was going to ask you is Hong Kong's experience. Mainland, one country, two systems, administration and management over Hong Kong. What sort of lessons can we draw from that?
A lot of people say that if it's a military solution, there's no need to have one country, two systems. I disagree, and I disagree so strongly with this view. Because the one country, two system is not a way to buy off the people of Hong Kong or the public about our unifications. There's a debate everywhere, including in Beijing, okay? What is the fundamental nature of this policy? Is this buy off popular support? That means the one country, two systems not real. It's just to pacify the Hong Kong people or the British to accepting our move to take back Hong Kong. Or this is a real policy concerning the interests of China to preserve Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan's original system because we need this interface with the rest of the world outside of China because we are going to be coexist with this world of different political, social, economic system for a long time to come. So when Chairman Mao in the 50s lay out a basic principle for their China or Hong Kong policy is to think long and utilize Hong Kong to the best of possibilities. 长期打算充分利用，好吧? You got to think long and use Hong Kong to the best to assist to helping China's situation. And clearly he's right? The Korean War is a good example. China's opening and reform and opening is another huge example of how preserving Hong Kong's status quo is a tremendous help for the national development. And this is not going to be for 10, 20 years or 30 years. It looks like this situation that China, a socialist China, is going to exist in this world of capitalist country or all kinds of different political social systems for a long time to come. So to preserve Macau, Hong Kong, and Taiwan as it is now is beneficial to China. It's not just a buyout, to pacify the Taiwanese, the Hong Kong people. There's two very different views still existing in Beijing and other places. And we are arguing over this. Okay, we can argue this continuously. But I think the leadership are quite clear on this because Xi Jinping in 2019, in the beginning of the year, had asked the people to work out the one country, two system policy for Taiwan. I think he's consistent on this. But for China now, it's a big issue because the Taiwan situation is very different from Hong Kong under British rule. They had this election for years, even though it created a lot of problems, a lot of people are not happy with it. But their history and their situation is quite different from Hong Kong. So the one country, two system, in principle, which means the way of life, the economic and social system in Taiwan will not be changed.
Right.
That's the basic. Foreign affairs, defense, national issues in the hands of the national government. That's the basic. But in terms of how this would apply to Taiwan, is a huge issue. We've been dealing with this based on Hong Kong's experience and our understanding of one country, two system, or our limited understanding of the Taiwanese situation. My thinking has been changed too. Beijing has to be clear about this. After liberation, how are you going to deal with a very complicated social, economic, and political situation in Taiwan? I think they're still dealing with this. until they have a solution or a solution that they can be confident of, no action will be taken. But the situation, back to it, is dangerous. It's dangerous because, not because of Beijing want to take a rash action over Taiwan, but because of what the elements in Taiwan and the American right wing will push the situation beyond the red line. And the red line actually is not very clear and definitive. And that's the danger. If we are very clear red line, the other side will not break it, because I don't think they want a war. I mean, the larger picture, they don't want a war. But some element within the US would want a war because they think it will drag down China. That's the internal politics of the US. Taiwan has no say on it. We don't have any say on it. And we have to react to it if it happens. And that's the bad side of it. We are on the risk.
Well, that's it for the first part of the Thinkers Forum. In the next section, we hear from Peter Turchin, a complexity scientist and the author of End Times, who speaks to us about the US elections, the Trump administration, the way United States is governed and how it functions, especially as seen in the geopolitical arena. Stay with us.
So what happened in the November of 2024, it was a true revolution. In fact, in my book, End Times, which was published 2 years ago, I wrote that America is in a revolutionary situation. First of all, it's a revolution of elites, because the MAGA movement is attempting to replace the established elites and replace them with loyalists from their own camp. So they have already done that at the top level. The second thing is that not all revolutions are transformative, but the intent of Trump and his power network is to transform the way United States is governed and how it functions. This is very clearly seen, especially in the geopolitical arena, where the feeling is, certainly from J.D. Vance, for example, that he would not be sad to see NATO go. This is a major realignment on the geopolitical arena. And remember, revolutions can be unsuccessful. First of all, the established elites may somehow roll back the MAGA movement. And established elites are fighting back. They're fighting back, first of all, in mass media, like in New York Times, CNN, and so on and so forth. But also, they are using the judicial system. So Senator Schumer, for example, has clearly stated this, that he said over the past several years, we have elected many progressive judges, and now these judges putting brakes on what the Trump administration is trying to do. And keep in mind that the established elites actually did not expect what happened in November. All right? They were a bit delusional, thinking that they would win the elections. People will not vote for Trump. So they are still in disarray. But there is a strategy evolving that is using the judicial system. And then, of course, there are going to be elections in 2026, the midterm elections, and then elections in 2028. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is that even if the counter elites manage to stay in power and transform themselves into established elites, they may not still understand or be willing to accomplish a set of reforms that removes the root cause for popular discontent and intra-elite infighting. Right? And then, as we know from the study of the past, revolution often devours its children. It often leads to several revolutions of the elites. One elite mismanages things and gets replaced by another power group, and so on, until they figure out how to take the country out from the crisis. So in the French Revolution, for example, the established elites had their heads cut off with the guillotine, right? And most revolutions actually produce seas of blood. So far, we have not seen that in the United States, although one has to be careful because in such tense situations, any kind of violence can spiral and result in a lot of violence and many people getting killed. My team has been studying history of states over the past many thousand years. We have now collected several hundred examples of societies sliding into crisis and then emerging from that. And one interesting observation we made is that the probability of utter collapse, more than half of the population is gone, there is complete political fragmentation, and many other bad things happen. The probability of collapse has been declining as we get closer to today. And it's not just time. What happens is that clearly human societies have been learning. They've been accumulating institutional knowledge that allows them to go through these periods, these end times, in a less bloody way, and also to reconstitute the society faster once they get into crisis. In essentially all the cases that we have studied how societies exit from crisis, they have to find a way to change the society in such a way that they remove the roots of political instability. And what is the root of political instability? Remember, I mentioned that two major factors are intra-elite conflict and popular discontent. All right, so inter-elite conflict results from what we call elite overproduction. It's when there are too many elite wannabes, too many elite aspirants vying for a fixed number of positions. It's like a game of musical chairs, except that you don't remove chairs, you start with 10 chairs and 11 players, right? And you keep 10 chairs, but you increase the number of players. And as the number of players goes to 15, 20, 30, 40, right, the situation tends to break down. People start breaking rules and all kinds of chaos ensues. And that's how elite overproduction leads to intra-elite infighting. The second big factor is popular discontent. Popular discontent is driven by stagnating or declining levels of well-being for the majority of the population. Now, what's interesting, our analysis of historical data shows that both popular immiseration and elite overproduction have the same root. We call it the wealth pump. So what happened in the United States in particular is that up until 1970s, the productivity of American workers and also GDP per capita, which are very similar things, has increased, right? And the wages of American workers have increased in parallel. And then around 1977, 78, even though the productivity has continued to increase, the wages stagnated and even declined. So all that extra wealth produced by workers was not going to the majority of the population, it was going to the economic elites and more generally to elites. And that's actually had three consequences. First of all, it created popular immiseration. And popular immiseration in the United States actually became noticeable in absolute terms when the life expectancies began to decline even before COVID, and several other factors show that population was actually not enjoying increasing well-being. And then we had two other outcomes from the wealth pump. First of all, it was the overproduction of wealth holders. Population grew by 40%, but the numbers of decamillionaires increased tenfold. And the numbers of billionaires increased even more. And that created a lot of elite overproduction because many of these wealth holders were interested in either competing for political positions or maybe running candidates. So now we suddenly had 10 times as many elite aspirants for the same fixed number of chairs. And the third consequence of wealth pump was that because the majority of the population was feeling like they're losing ground, and how do you do it if you don't inherit wealth? You go to college, but college degree is quite degraded by this point, so you go get advanced degrees, especially law degrees. It turns out that law degree holders are the most dangerous from the political stability point of view. I can just give you a long list of counter elites who were trained as lawyers. Unfortunately, I don't see a clear understanding in the Trump administration of the causes, of the deep causes of the crisis. The right-wing populists such as J.D. Vance and Tucker Carlson, who has no opposition, but he is very influential as a persuader, right? They seem to be often talking the right things, right? But I don't see that a systemic understanding of this. All right, now how do we get out of it? In the past, societies had to shut down the wealth pump, which after some time would remove both the immiseration and elite overproduction causes for a crisis. That's very difficult to do because the situation, the wealth pump, is very lucrative for the elites. So they have to sacrifice their selfish advantage. So the political process has taken different routes in different case studies that we looked into. In particular, as I mentioned, there is the bloody route when the established elites are essentially either exterminated or physically exterminated, or they are forced into downward social mobility. All right. But in some, maybe in 10, 15 cases that we studied, the elites managed to pull together and come up with a set of reforms. So probably it would be useful to look at the United States 100 years ago, during the progressive era, which is roughly speaking from 1900 to 1914, and then the New Deal era, 1930s. This is when the United States managed to avoid a civil war, unlike what happened in 1860s when a very bloody American Civil War destroyed the previous ruling class, the Southern slaveholder elites who in coalition with Northern merchants. What happened in the progressive era and the New Deal era, that American elites have learned enough and they managed to put through a variety of reforms. So, for example, they gave more power to workers by allowing them to organize and press for their rights with labor strikes and other means. Right? They created, Medicare, Social Security. So there was just a whole suite of reforms. And also during this time, they increased dramatically the taxes on especially wealthy people. So by 1960, for example, people who with incomes of more than $1 million, which was a lot of money, especially then, paid over 90% of their income in taxes. So something like this, of course, our country now is different. 100 years is a long time, but some kind of a mixture of such reforms would also be needed to shut down the wealth pump. And also we will have to judge these reforms by consequences, which always takes time to develop and see. So that's another reason why I don't expect things to happen very rapidly. We are going to be in a period of social turbulence for many years, I think, in the future.
And all too soon, we've come to the end of this week's edition of China Now, your most authoritative news and current affairs talk show that seeks to bring China closer to your doorstep. We are happy that you always make time to watch us. Don't forget to share with us your comments, thoughts, feedback, and suggestions through the email provided below. My name is Makiza Latifa, and it is always a pleasure spending my morning here with you on China Now. See you same time next week. But until then, let China not be far away from you anymore.